Hey everybody, my name is Tim Hepworth here with Fly Fishing River Outfitters and Thursday Night Live Fly Tying, and we are here to do another quick ties brought to you by Rocky Mountain Fly Shop. This week we are on episode 4 of season 5, and we are going to be tying up the Gonga articulated streamer, this little guy here. I'm going to be tying out of the season 5 kit. Looks just like this. If you haven't already got one of these things, you can still head over to our website and pick one up today at www.flyfishingbullriver.com/TNLS4. Go ahead and grab one. They're definitely worth having them. All right, let's head on over to our streamer.
S5.
Oh, S5. Sorry. /TNLS5. It's season 5. We're not even that far into season 5, and I can't keep track already. This is what we're hoping it's going to look like at the end. We're going to try to mimic this again. So if you go into your season 4, said it again, season 5 kit, episode 4, we're going to go in there and you're going to have 2 flies in there. Let's grab out the Gonga streamer and let's get to work. Don't forget to like and subscribe to this video if you appreciate what's going on here. We also want to know if you're part of the this quick tie group and the replay squad. Leave a comment. There might be some prizes coming your way for doing that as well. All right, let's head on over to the vise. Gonna get this guy out of there. We're gonna grab our long streamer hook. It's gonna be 2 hooks identical to this going into the vise for this fly as it is articulated. Get it in there so it's semi-level if you can. I'm gonna be using some UTC 140 in black for this fly. Okay, something a little heftier as it's a streamer. Let's go ahead and get our thread started up by the eye. We can clip out that tag end and then just go ahead and work it back all the way to the hook bend. Just wanted to lay a little bit of a layer down there. We're going to get right into those materials. So not a lot of materials in this fly, but some real good ones. First off, we're going to start with our marabou. Okay, we're going to be tying this in kind of a yellowy brown contrast color today. So I'm just grabbing this marabou. I'll put a little bit of moisture on my fingers so I can see a little bit better length. Okay, so I'm going to have roughly a full hook shank length out the back of the fly. I'll transition that back to there, switch fingers, do that gathering wrap we know and love so well. Secure that down at the base, right at the bend, but not into the bend. And then we're just going to work our thread forward, trapping that stem. We're just going to use that stem as some of the bulk so we don't use up as much dubbing, as we're going to be coming to that right away as well. Trim that out, make sure it's good and secure. Now we're just going to run our thread back over top of it to our tie-in point here. So we want that hanging right about where the barb is when you're done tying that in. It should be roughly where we are. Okay. Now we're going to go and grab one of our saddle hackles. Okay. So we're going to have, you're going to need 2 of them in this fly, but here's the first one. We like that saddle hackle. Has a little bit of marabou kind of at the tip of it. So if we get to use some of that, that's a bonus as well. So I'm going to pull a few of these feather fibers back and I'm just going to tie it in just like so. Tie that in with the underside of the feather pointed back down the fly. Secure that stem. We'll use a little bit of that as well. Then I'm just going to kind of keep this out of the way the best I can, run my thread back up. Now we're going to go over to this golden dubbing. Looks like so. Okay. Now we're just going to make a dubbing noodle. Keep it nice and simple. We're not trying to make anything look super fancy. We're just trying to create some bulk and an underbody color change and transition. So as you can see, as we've talked about many times before, when I go in there, not going back and forth, I'm going in one direction. So just like this, I'm gonna get that dubbing onto my thread. So it's okay if it's a little inconsistent, doesn't look super even, because when we go to put it on the hook, we're gonna space out those wraps. We're gonna probably have to fill this dubbing noodle up a couple times. This is quite a long hook. Then we're just gonna go to work. Okay, we're gonna start right back, covering up our back thread wraps, and just start palmering forward, trying to create a fairly even underbody. Okay, doesn't have to be anything too wild because this is all going to get covered up with our saddle hackle anyways. Add some more. Continue to work our way up that hook shank. Just keep adding down the thread. This should be enough, pretty close to anyways, to take us all the way forward. We'll come here. Just continue wrapping forward. We want to finish this dubbing pretty close to the eye. Just about did. I'm going to add just one more little pinch. We want to get pretty close to the eye, and we're going to bring the feather forward on top of it as well. Bring that up there. Just like that. All right. I'm just going to throw a quick half hitch in there. We talk about using that as our save button, making sure that that doesn't go anywhere or come undone. And now I'm going to go and start palmering this saddle hackle forward. So you basically are going to decide how tight you want your wraps based off how long your feather is. These saddles are kind of medium in length, not as long as a schlappen, not as short as a regular hackle feather. So I'm going to space these out so that I get to use a little bit of that marabou at the bottom. I like having that. Creates kind of a nice little bulky midsection of this fly. Going to take it right to there. I'm going to pull those materials back and out of the way. Bring my thread back. I'm going to do securing wraps, so behind and in front. We know this rhythm, behind and in front. We're going to do that a couple times, make sure it's not going anywhere. Take a few thread wraps right at the front. And then we'll snip out the tag end of that stem, like so. And we're left with something that looks like that. Really like how that transitions from that hackle to that little bit of marabou. Not critical if you don't have it, because we are going to put marabou on the next hook shank as well. I just like that little extra added bulk. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and whip finish this section off, because this section is going to be done. And feel free to grab whatever resin you want to put on here. But if you do a couple good whip finishes, you probably wouldn't really need it with this heavier thread anyways, but feel free to do as you wish. I'm going to get my thread out of the way. That's the first section, guys. So go ahead and drop that portion out. Go ahead and grab the next hook. Same size hook. Coming in. Again, making sure you get it fairly level in your vise. And then we're going to go to work with this one. So I'm going to start my thread just behind the eye. Like so. Trim out that tag end again. We have a little bit more work to do up here at the front of this fly, because we have a few more materials going in. But first off, we're going to start with our dumbbell eyes. So we're going to go ahead and grab a set of those lead eyes, look like so. We've affixed these to the hooks quite a few times, but just remember, you're going to come in, take a thread over top. It kind of naturally wants to pull it to one angle, then switch directions. Go the other way. Go back and forth, do some figure eights, get kind of that initial securement of those eyes down to the top of the hook shank. Once I've got it in there and I kind of think, okay, it's not going anywhere as of yet. Now, again, we want the dumbbell eyes on this fly are going to ride underneath so that the hook point is going to ride down. So all I'm going to do is spin that around to the bottom of the hook. And I'm going to put a few more thread wraps in here, just kind of secure it and to pull those eyes back level the way I want them to be, because you want them to be fairly even when you look at them like so. Okay. I'm happy with that. I'm going to do a few thread wraps just around the eyes themselves, and then I'm going to work my thread back. I'm going to stop about the midway place on the hook. You're going to go from your kits. You're grabbing now a piece of this heavy mono we got here. Okay, we're going to grab this because we're going to tie this in to connect the back portion of the fly. So I'm going to leave this right on top of the hook shank. Going to secure that with a few wraps forward and then start heading back. Trying to keep it basically right on top of the hook shank. Once we get to the bend of the hook, or about at that barb, okay, we're going to leave that there. I'm going to grab myself a few beads out of my kit. We've got these red beads. I'm going to slide them onto that mono. Going to go one more. A number is not super critical, 2 or 3. It just tries to help the trailing hook from not getting hooked on the front portion. Okay, now I'm going to come in here making sure the hook is down from the back portion. I'm going to go up and through the bottom of the eye, and then over top and through those 3 beads again in the opposite direction. And it should have come out like so. Now I'm going to grab that, and now I can decide how long I want this loop to be. Okay, so I want just a small loop out the back of the fly. Okay, I don't want it to be super long. About the width of 1 or 2 of those beads max. Now that I've got it there, I'm holding it so it's right up on top of the hook shank again. I'm going to do my first gathering wrap, and then I'm securing the other side of that mono down. When I get about midway here, I'm going to take and fold back over that tag. There's just a little tag left. Fold it back over, secure that down, meaning that is not going to go anywhere. Okay, now we're going to come back to our tying point here. Now, if you've got any spare little lead wire or a hair clip or whatever, at this point, when I'm tying these articulated streamers, I like to do this. I can just use some of that wire just to hold that on like so. And that's just going to keep it out of my way. It's not going anywhere. Now I'm going to come back in with another piece of marabou, okay? So grab another piece of marabou from your kit. And this one, we're going to place right at this tie-in so that it basically comes back roughly halfway into that next hook. So we don't want it to be super long and overhang the whole thing because we want to see this stuff in the water, that other saddle we put in there. So I'm just going to have a nice little plume about halfway down the hook. And it's important this time that when I go to tie it in, I'm kind of pushing down and making that marabou go on both sides of the hook and hopefully all the way to the bottom. Then I do just one light wrap first, do the same thing again. Try to make it so it goes all the way around, and then I can do a second, third, fourth, more secure wraps. And I'm going to do the same thing I did before. I'm going to use that bulk of the feather, move that forward, leave a little bit of space behind the eye, and we can snip that out. Now just get that tag in nice and clamped down. And I'm going to run my thread back to the start of this feather. And now we're just going to repeat what we did in the back end, in the front end now. So we need to go back. We need to tie in another one of our saddle hackles. So I'm going to come in here, tie this guy in. I'm going to secure that stem down so I know this isn't going to go anywhere. Just like that. Get my thread back to that tying point again. And now we're going to make another dubbing noodle out of our dubbing. So get back to that kind of crystally shiny golden dubbing and start making another dubbing noodle. Another nice long one because we're going to have to cover up all the way to just behind the back of the eyes here. We'll just keep adding. We're going to do probably 5 inches or so. And we might have to still add a little bit more after that. But we'll start to get a nice little underbody. Start right at the back there and keep going forward. Just covering up that, basically our thread wraps and that marabou stem. Gonna add a little bit more here, not too much more, we're almost there. So we want to stop about where I stopped that marabou, leaving a little bit of space behind those eyes. If you put too much in your thread, it's okay, you can always get it back off. This should work out okay though, right here. Voila. Okay. Gonna take a couple thread wraps there, and now I'm gonna start working. I'm actually gonna half hitch this just to get my thread out of the way over on my cradle. This makes this a little bit easier. And I'm gonna start palmering this forward, just like we did in the back section. Spacing those out as evenly as possible. Okay, I'm gonna get to use just a little bit of that marabou, which is perfect. Like so. And I'm going to tie that off. Just like that. Secure it behind and in front. Repeat the process. Making sure that that does not go anywhere. A few more thread wraps. It's a nice thing about streamers, guys. We can keep adding thread wraps. It doesn't affect the overall appearance or anything of the fly. We just want it to be nice and secure. Okay. That is the first stage of the front portion of the fly. Now, we're going to get to play with some stuff here. First off, we're going to go ahead and grab some of these rubber legs. Okay, we've got 3 here. I've left them attached to each other. They're a little easier to tie in. We're going to tie in 3 on one side and 3 on the other side of the fly. So I'm not folding these suckers. I'm going to tie them in nice and long. So I'm just going to place it on the far side of the fly from you. Get those ones in. So those are going to hang here. And once they're in, I'm just going to leave them like so for now, and then I'll split them in a moment. I'm going to grab these 3. Tie these ones in on your side of the fly or the far side of the fly from me. Try to get all 3 gathered in there. And in a perfect world, we want them to stay somewhat on the edge of that fly like that. And then once I have them, I'm going to get them all together and I'm going to snip them off about halfway through that front marabou portion. So they're all the same length. And now I can go ahead and I can separate them. They're kind of just going to exist and move and flutter all off each side of the fly. There we go. Separate those guys. Now we're going to go and grab this material you have in your kit. It's called pseudo hair. Kind of a funny material. Don't get mad at me. This is how the pattern is tied with this funky stuff. So we're going to go through this and kind of show you how to work with it a little bit. So I'm going to grab a decent clump. We are going to make kind of the top wing here. So I'm trying to kind of even up. I can stack that material back on itself a little bit. But I want a little bit of a broad portion. So it's about like so. I'm then going to fold that over. I'm going to try to work a little bit of a taper onto that top side. And all I'm doing is kind of brushing and stroking. So you can see I'm pulling out a few fibers, but I'm trying to have a little bit of a tapered pointy edge, kind of almost like so. About like that. Now I'm going to take this and I'm going to set it right on top of just behind the eyes. And I want this to extend over this entire front portion of the hook and just a little bit into that marabou. So it's almost getting back to that connection point. I'm going to lay it right on top. Switch my fingers so it's perfectly even. Come up, do a nice gathering wrap. Pull down hard on that first one. We don't want this to move anywhere. Take a few more wraps to secure it in place, like so. Okay. This kind of funky hair. And now I'm going to come in here and I'm going to trim out what I just left there. And now this recipe actually calls for the rest of the head of the fly to be built out of the same material. Okay. So what we're going to do that, I'm just going to get that secured down. Now I have these legs that are kind of all over the place a little bit. I'm just going to grab a hair clip, or you could use some more of that lead wire if you got some. I'm just going to do this to kind of hold it out of the way. Now, I'm going to make a dubbing loop. Okay, not a super long one, 4 or 5 inches. So I went over top, 2 fingers on the thread, come on top, and now underneath to the opposite side, and I'm going to toss my bobbin over top of it. So I'm basically doing that behind and front motion, except to secure that loop of thread. Now I secure that down right there. Now I'm going to advance my thread forward to right behind the eye. Throw in a little half hitch to save my work. Set that off to the side. And now I'm going to use my dubbing spinner. Okay, grab your whatever yours looks like, doesn't matter. I'm going to hook it right in there and I can just let that hang for a second. Now I'm going to go back to my pseudo hair. Now how we're going to kind of accomplish this is I'm going to take, for instance, I have this whole strip like so. I'm going to come in and I'm going to cut these little sections off. Okay, so that's probably a ½ inch. I'm going to trim it off so it looks like that. Okay, now I'm going to kind of spread it out a little bit so it's not bunched together. I'm going to take that and I'm going to slide it into my dubbing loop. And I'm going to do this probably 3 times, getting these decent sized clumps in there. So you can see all I did was slide it in that dubbing loop. Okay, now I'm going to do the same thing again. Cut another piece. We are going to spin this up and build our head out of it, kind of palmering it around the eyes. In my opinion, it's not the best looking head when it's done, but hey, it's inventive. It's a good use of a different material that we don't normally use. I'm going to open that dubbing noodle again, or sorry, that dubbing loop, and set that in there. And you're noticing I'm doing it kind of 50-50, so I want equal material on either side. Now I'm going to do one more section. Again, don't forget, you want to spread these out a little bit because you don't want them to be all clumped together. So I'm kind of pulling, and I want to see some air kind of in between. It's going to spin up way nicer if it's like that. Slide this last piece in the dubbing loop. Kind of make sure you get all that material kind of evenly spaced out. This is probably going to be more than enough material, probably too much, but that's okay. We don't have to use it all. And now, all I'm going to do is I'm going to spin it, spin my dubbing spinner, let that start cording up. We want to make sure it's pretty corded by the time we start putting it in. If you overspin, there is that possibility of breaking your thread, which is not ideal either. But something like this, I want to be able to grab those materials and they don't pull out. If I grab it, because they're slippery, if I grab them and they start pulling out, I got to spin a little bit more. This is pretty good. Okay. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to start palmering this. So what that looks like is I'm going to basically do like I did when I tied in my thread. I'm basically going to figure 8 around those eyes, but first I'm going to do one full wrap behind the eyes, okay, all the way around, and then I'm going to go under to one side, okay, do that figure 8 so it goes to the other side, and then back in front, and we're going to do one full wrap in front. And you are right, this is looking like a bad hair day situation, but we are going to do some brushing and some trimming. Okay, so now I'm going to secure that off, that dubbing loop. Get out in front of it, make sure I got some thread wraps just around the eye. Then be real careful when you go in there not to cut your thread. trim that out. And there you go. That's what we're going to waste out of that one. And now it's important, pull that back, get some good thread wraps down. So none of that's going to slip out. We know that dubbing loop isn't going to slip out. Once I got a nice little thread dam up there, if you look, you should pretty much have coverage around that whole thing, or the whole dumbbell eyes. I'm going to whip finish this real quick, and then I'm going to get to work on brushing and trimming, and we will call a wrap on this fly. Okay, go ahead and use some resin again if you want to. I would suggest doing it after you trim, as you don't want to get any of it into that material. Now, I'm going to grab my trusty dubbing brush, also known as a little bit of Velcro and a tongue depressor. And I'm just going to kind of comb this out. Okay, I'm not trying to pull fibers out. I'm just trying to basically get them to stand up so that I can see them better and I can kind of trim appropriately. The shape we're going for here is just kind of a cone shape on the head, tapering into that nice, I'm going to take that off for now so you can see. We want it to taper into that, basically that cone head that's coming off the back, that back hair. We want it to taper into that. So now I'm going to come in here like so. You kind of have to grab the top of it when you do this because it's a slippery material for your scissors. Make sure those eyes are visible. I'm just going to slowly work my way kind of all the way around. I don't really want much hair on the bottom. Just enough to kind of cover up some of the eyes. You can kind of get as picky as you want, but also just be very careful not to cut out those rubber legs because they are right there as well. Something like that, guys. I'm happy with that shape. Basically just creating a little bit of a cone profile going back into the back here. Now the last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to grab my Sharpie. A brown one or a black one is what this pattern calls for. I'm going to grab that top hair, kind of pull it out. And I'm going to touch some, or what they call barring marks. So I'm going to make some bars. Going down it, leaving a little bit of space in between. This is a permanent marker, so this isn't going to come off in the water. All the way down to where that hair kind of ends. Okay. And then I'm going to, I like this on the top of the head is to go all dark brown. Okay, so I'm just going to take a few strokes of the pen, darken up right on top of the head. It gives a nice contrast to this fly. Okay, and I'll flip it up to you so you can see. Nice dark head into that hair. And that, my friends, is the Gonga articulated streamer. Hope you guys enjoyed that tie. Please don't forget to let us know that you're in the show and that you're watching these quick dies, part of the replay squad. Again, my name's Tim Hepworth, and I'm here with Fly Fishing Boat Outfitters and Thursday Night Live Fly Tying. Apparently I can't talk today. And this was from Season 5, Episode 4, not Season 4. Don't forget to like and subscribe this video. We really appreciate the support. We want to thank Rocky Mountain Fly Shop for bringing you this quick tie this week. And we will see you in 7 days' time.